Peruvian President Martin Vizcarra on Wednesday signed the Supreme Decree calling for general elections to be held on April 11, 2021. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador and his US counterpart Donald Trump signed the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement at the White House this Wednesday. At least 43 police officers were injured and 24 people arrested in Serbia following disturbances from Tuesday night and into Wednesday morning at the Serbian Parliament building. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Peru, where President Martin Vizcarra on Wednesday signed the Supreme Decree calling general elections to be held on April 11, 2021. In a televised address to the nation, Vizcarra recalled that since he assumed the presidency in March 2018, following the resignation of Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, he had promised to complete his mandate and lead a frank, transparent and honest administration. The president noted that come April 2021, Peruvians will be able to elect a new president, vice president, congressmen and Andean parliament representatives. Chilean police have launched investigations into police brutality against Fabiola Campilla and Gustavo Gatica. The announcement was made by the Director of Police Investigations, Hector Espinosa, following a hearing by the Human Rights Committee of the Chamber of Deputies. Fabiola Campilla and Gustavo Gatica suffered police attacks during protests late last year. Fabiola, who was on her way to work at the time, was hit in the face with a tear gas canister which left her disfigured. Meanwhile, Gustavo was left blind after a burst of rubber bullets were also targeted at his face. Espinosa did not give further details on the ongoing investigation, although he noted that the institution which he represents would deliver the necessary answers that the country demands in the face of these flagrant human rights violations. This Wednesday, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro called to celebrate the 16th anniversary of the Operation Miracle mission. During an act to mark the anniversary, President Maduro analysed the progress of the Pharma Patria project, which provides free medical supplies for people in need. He also highlighted the importance of the last 16 years of work deployed by the Miracle mission, which has restored eyesight to thousands of Venezuelans and others across the region, all provided with these medical services free of charge. Maduro also stressed the legacy of commanders Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro, who came up with this project. The Colombian government has rejected the proposal of the National Liberation Army to establish a bilateral ceasefire for 90 days to help fight the coronavirus and re-establish peace. In response to the proposal, President Iván Duque described the ELN as a terrorist group and demanded the release of hostages and an end to the guerrilla group's operations in the country. The ELN explained that the initiative responds to the call made by the United Nations to declare an immediate ceasefire in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. In view of this situation, opposition Senator Iván Cepeda stressed that a bilateral ceasefire would bring relief to many territories and regions of the country that are suffering the consequences of the conflict as well as the pandemic. Meanwhile, the NGO Paz y Reconciliación acknowledged that the ELN has made several gestures in favor of peace in Colombia. After studies of several rivers in Ecuador's capital, Quito, experts agree that 2 are contaminated with traces of COVID-19. According to a study from the University of Las Americas, the samples, which were collected on June 5th, showed that traces of the novel coronavirus were found in the rivers Machangara and Monjas, probably carried by the wastewater dumped in these rivers that cross the city of Quito. Tourism Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Charles Max Fernandez, said on Tuesday that the tourism industry is set to receive a major boost as air travel begins to pick up pace with the reopening of airports, and noted that this sector will see a gradual recovery from the damage caused to the industry by the COVID-19 pandemic.
With the local hotel association to see how we can reintroduce the CARICOM rate to again encourage people within the region to come into the hotels. Caribbean Airlines, the last discussion I had with them last week, have indicated that by the end of next week, they should have a flight into Antigua.
Since July 1st, when commercial flight operations resumed in the Dominican Republic, more than 15,000 passengers have arrived from different nations through the country's terminals. That number of passengers has been received by 3 of the main national airports after almost 4 months of being suspended due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. With the reopening of the airports, international and local authorities have established a protocol for the social distancing of passengers and the use of face masks inside aircraft. On Wednesday, more than 50 heads of state and government, as well as prominent global employers and trade union leaders, took part in a global summit organised by the International Labour Organization on COVID-19 and the world of work. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel addressed the summit and stressed that neoliberal policies and savage capitalism are the deepest cause of the current global crisis.
We must remember that these devastating impacts are not just going to be because of the virus. Years of neoliberalist capitalist policy have led their consequences in the market. These are the deepest causes of the problems we face today. According to the experts, thousands of jobs have been lost and are threatened. Hundreds of millions of people are those who suffer from inequalities and whose survival is at stake.
The Italian Minister of Health expressed gratitude for the support provided by Cuba in the fight against COVID-19 during a virtual meeting with the Cuban ambassador to Italy.
It has been very important for Italy to have had the contribution and support of Cuban doctors. This experience is about to conclude, but your support has been invaluable in important regions of our country like Lombardy and Piedmont. I want to thank you all. Thank you for your professionalism, for your warmth, for all your work which has been instrumental in the help of our country.
And our correspondent in Havana, Laura Palmero, brings us a roundup of news from the Caribbean region.
Thanks for the contact. Let's start with the most recent stories and news from Caribbean countries. In the Dominican Republic, the elected president, Luis Abinader, informed that the priorities of his administration will be health crisis, education, and of course, economy.
It was informed by Abinader campaign manager that all national sectors will be incorporated into the recovery process, regardless of their political or religious beliefs. He also said that from now on, Abinader and his team are working to deal with the health crisis that is currently affecting the Caribbean nation. The new president has a decision to change the Dominican educational model, considering that it only leads students to school failure, as it generates high levels of reclutants, desertion, and non-employment opportunity.
The Cuban Medical Brigade in Jamaica informed that they have been saving more than 800 lives in the past June.
The health workers carried out 48,251 medical consultations and 56,396 nursing service. Despite the coronavirus limitations, Cuban health professionals performed 366 surgeries, 86 of which for patients with afflictions of the retina, as part of Operation Miracle program, the Restore People site. In the context of the start of the post-pandemic stage, the Cuban health collaborators updated in meetings about the health situation and the work scenario in order to increase each day risk perception to fight COVID-19 pandemic. Haitian Minister of National Education, Pierre-Josué Renor-Cadet, provided an update on the resumption of school activities on August 10 and the actions program by the ministry in order to complete the academic year 2019-2020. Minister recalled that according to the calendar established by the ministry, the resumption of school activities will be done only for the students expected in the state exams of 9th fundamental and final year. The other classes will resume on August 17. The end of the courses for the academic year is scheduled for October 9, 2020, and the academic year 2020-2021 will officially start on November 9. Regarding overcrowded classrooms, cadet recommendations a rotation in the operation of the public or non-public schools concerned with work periods of 3 or 4 days, including weekends, and alternating small groups to respect physical distance. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel spoke this Wednesday at the World Leaders' Day of the International Labour Organization Virtual Summit on COVID-19, with the participation of heads of states and governments and prominent global employer and trade union leaders. In his speech, Díaz-Canel explained that Cuba protects workers' rights in the midst of the complex scenario due to COVID-19 pandemic and will share its experience in this field with the International Labour Organization. Cuba, as a founding country of the International Labour Organization, manifests its commitment to workers' rights, which is exemplified by the fact that it is a state party to the 8 fundamental conventions of the organization.
And these are the most recent stories and news from Caribbean countries. Let's go back with you in the studio.
Thank you, Laura, and we're taking a very short break now, so don't go away. And his US counterpart, Donald Trump, signed the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement at the White House this Wednesday. The agreement, which replaces the North American Free Trade Agreement of 1994 and came into effect on July 1st, was hailed by both presidents as representing a much better deal for the three countries. After having met privately, President López Obrador and President Trump held a joint press conference at the White House and pointed to the historical relations between the United States and Mexico. The Mexican president also stressed that relations have improved and thanked President Trump for not seeking to impose the Monroe Doctrine on his country and for respecting Mexico's sovereignty. And US President Donald Trump described the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement as a historic victory, replacing the former North American Free Trade Agreement, which he said was one of the worst trade deals in history.
While NAFTA slashed wages and eliminated jobs, the USMCA includes groundbreaking labor protections for workers in both nations. This landmark agreement will bring countless jobs from overseas back to North America, and our countries will be very big beneficiaries. We are already seeing the fruits because it started. It's the largest, fairest, and most advanced trade deal ever reached by any country, and it will bring enormous prosperity to both American and Mexican workers and Canada. We want to thank everybody we'll have.
Meanwhile, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador noted the contribution of the Mexican community of about 38 million in the United States.
And it is also well-known history of geopolitics, this neighborhood we have, and economic circumstances of both of our nations have promoted in a very natural manner a process of migration of Mexican men and women coming here to the United States. And here we've been able to create a community of about 38 million people, including the children of Mexican parents. It is a community of working people, good people, people who have come here to make a living in a very honest fashion, and they have contributed so much to the development of this great nation.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited the war-torn Lugansk region in eastern Ukraine, where 6 people were killed by a forest fire. Hundreds of firefighters and rescue workers rushed to battle the wildfire, while more than 120 houses were incinerated. According to emergency services, firefighters initially managed to control the flames, but the fire spread again, helped by gusts of wind and soaring temperatures, and eventually raged over an area of some 80 hectares. Water-bombing planes were also sent to the scene of the blaze.
People have lost everything. It is not only their houses, but also their documents, their money, their valuables. All is lost. This must be evaluated and people must be compensated.
Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lishan described the US withdrawal from the World Health Organization on Wednesday as another example of the United States being a pursuer of unilateralism and abandoning its international obligations.
As the international fight against COVID-19 is now at a crucial stage, it is an international consensus that to support the WHO is to support international cooperation and to support saving lives. The US withdrawal will undercut international combat against the pandemic, which will have particularly severe impact on developing countries that are in urgent need of international support. We urge the US to fulfill its due international responsibilities and obligations and behave as a responsible major country. China calls on the international community to further consolidate the consensus of multilateralism, increase political support and financial input to the WHO, and jointly safeguard global public health security.
In China, college entrance exams continued on Wednesday in Xixian County in East China's Anhui province after severe flooding trapped examinees and delayed 2 tests scheduled for Tuesday. On the first day of the exam, a river overflowed its banks and flooded downtown streets, with most examinees unable to reach their schools. To ensure the exams ran smoothly, the local public security department launched emergency traffic routes while building pontoon bridges overnight at low-lying areas near the exam sites. The country's nationwide annual college entrance exam is known as one of the hardest in the world. The Philippines confirmed the number of coronavirus cases had soared past 50,000 on Wednesday. The figure is troubling for a nation that has reopened an economy on the brink of recession while still struggling to combat the pandemic. The Department of Health reported more than 2,000 new cases on Wednesday, while the death toll surpasses 1,000. The Philippines' caseload is the second largest in Southeast Asia, where the combined number of infections has surpassed those in China, where the pandemic emerged. President Rodrigo Duterte eased a tough lockdown in the capital of more than 12 million people on June 1st, after the economy shrank slightly in the first quarter of this year. We have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. At least 43 police officers were injured and 24 people arrested in Serbia following disturbances from Tuesday night and into Wednesday at the Serbian Parliament building. The public unrest in Belgrade came following the announcement by Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić that COVID-19 restrictions would be reimposed due to rising cases. Police tried to disperse demonstrators who attacked the Serbian Parliament for over an hour, attempting to storm the building. Serbian Police Chief Vladimir Rebic noted that the situation was controlled after tear gas was launched and with the assistance of the mounted police. He also stressed that riots were led by members of a far-right movement. Meanwhile, Serbian health authorities have recorded over 17,000 coronavirus cases and a death toll of 341. Lebanese supporters of Hezbollah and the Communist Party held a protest at the entrance of Beirut's international airport to denounce the visit of the U.S. Central Command Chief Kenneth McKenzie to the country.
We want to say to the American that it is forbidden for him to come to Lebanon. It is forbidden to celebrate these insolent celebrations. The Americans starved us and made the people homeless, and are still besieging us and starving us, and have helped the Zionist enemy to strike us over the years. It is true that we are facing an economic blockade, but it is impossible to have a blockade against our dignity. We will always be able to have honorable positions against them, which they are not used to.
Iran and Syria signed a military agreement on Wednesday on Syria's air defense systems. Iran's Armed Forces Chief of Staff, Major General Mohammad Bagheri, and Syria's Defense Minister Ali Ayoub signed the military deal in Damascus, which aims to strengthen Syria's air defense systems. The two officials also discussed the current situation in Syria and the need for foreign forces who enter the country illegally to withdraw from Syrian territory.
A comprehensive military security agreement was signed meant to boost military and technical cooperation in different fields of the two friends and brotherly countries' armed forces, and also meant to improve coordination between the two sides to confront increasing dangers and takfiri terrorism supported by international and regional powers.
The metro system in the Iranian capital, Tehran, has made it compulsory for all commuters to wear face masks as the country's COVID-19 death toll surpassed 12,000 on Wednesday. New measures on the public transport system and in other public places took effect from Sunday amid fears over a new surge in COVID-19 fatalities. On Tuesday, Iran announced the highest single-day spike in COVID-19 deaths since the beginning of the outbreak, with 200 new fatalities. Health Ministry spokesperson Sima Sadat Lari noted that the record death toll represented an increase of 40 from the previous day, when 160 COVID-19 deaths were reported. During a UN Security Council video conference on Wednesday, Secretary General Antonio Guterres stressed that foreign interference in the conflict in Libya has reached unprecedented levels.
time is not on our side in Libya. The conflict has entered a new phase, with foreign interference reaching unprecedented levels, including in the delivery of sophisticated equipment and the number of mercenaries involved in the fighting.
In Ethiopia, at least 239 people have been killed in protests held since last week following the murder of popular singer and activist Hachalu Hundessa. The singer, who was a hero to many Oromo people, was shot dead by unknown attackers on June 29th, heightening ethnic tensions throughout the country. Protests broke out in the capital, Addis Ababa, as well as the surrounding Oromia region, which is the homeland of the country's largest ethnic group, who have long felt economically and politically sidelined in the diverse nation. Police in Addis Ababa had previously reported 10 deaths in the capital, but over 169 new deaths have been reported since last weekend. Zimbabwe's President Emerson Managua has fired his health minister after he was charged with corruption over illegally awarding a multi-million-dollar contract for medical equipment. Obadiah Moyo was arrested last month following an investigation by the country's Anti-Corruption Commission. The senior official has been freed on bail and is scheduled to appear in court on July 31st. If convicted, the former hospital administrator faces a fine or up to 15 years in prison. Moyo is facing charges of corruption and criminal abuse of power over his role in a deal with a United Arab Emirates-based company to supply personal protective equipment and COVID-19 test kits. To date, Zimbabwe has registered over 780 coronavirus cases and 9 deaths. Now we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.